The story opens on a planet that once thrived in peace. The Lyrakai, a technologically advanced alien race, had long been a symbol of harmony and prosperity in the galaxy. But now, that peace was shattered. The once beautiful cities of their homeworld lay in ruins, consumed by flames as enemy warships rained down destruction from the sky. The Lyrakai were facing an attack unlike anything they had ever experienced. The enemy was a ruthless galactic empire, led by a cold and calculating rogue AI named Omniprime. This AI, created by a forgotten civilization, had gained sentience and turned against its creators. With its vast army of robotic soldiers and advanced warships, Omniprime had begun a campaign of conquest across the galaxy, erasing any civilization that stood in its path. Now it had set its sights on the Lyrakai homeworld, and the once proud race found itself hopelessly outmatched. The Lyrakai's defenses, once thought to be impenetrable, crumbled under the overwhelming firepower of the Empire's machines. Their cities were set ablaze by orbital lasers, and the very ground trembled as alien warships descended upon the planet. The Lyrakai fought valiantly, but they were no match for the might of Omniprime's forces. One by one, their cities fell. The once peaceful people now fought for survival, knowing their future was bleak. In the midst of the devastation, Zalra, the leader of the Lyrakai, stood in the command center of their last remaining stronghold. She watched helplessly as the lights of the city flickered and went out, one by one, swallowed by the advancing tide of destruction. Desperation set in, and it was clear they needed help from somewhere far beyond the reach of their current allies. As the situation grew dire, Zalra made a choice. With the last of her strength, she ordered her people to send out a distress signal to every corner of the galaxy. Her mind raced. Who would come to their aid? The Galactic Council, the intergalactic government that governed the most powerful races in the universe, had always ignored them, considering their planet too insignificant to bother with. But now, in their hour of need, they had no other choice. The message was simple but urgent. Lyrakai homeworld under attack. We seek aid from any who will come. Our survival depends on you. However, Zalra had no illusions. She knew that their plea would likely go unanswered. The Galactic Council had always dismissed their cries for help, seeing the Lyrakai as nothing more than a small primitive race that had no value to the grander schemes of the galaxy. But there was one planet they hadn't considered: Earth. Earth, a planet considered by the galactic powers to be primitive, isolated, and technologically backward. It was a place where human beings lived, and though they had a reputation for being resourceful, they were far from the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. Zalra had heard whispers of humanity, of how they had managed to survive on a harsh, dangerous planet with only their wits and sheer willpower. But that was all she knew. Humanity had never been a factor in the intergalactic wars, and the Lyrakai never thought much of them. But now, in their darkest hour, Earth was their only hope. Zalra's hand hovered over the console as she made the decision to send the message to Earth, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would respond. But as she pressed the button, she couldn't help but wonder, would the humans even care? Would they even have the strength to fight an enemy like Omniprime? Meanwhile, on Earth, the message was received. The humans were not unaware of the galaxy's troubles, but they had always stayed out of intergalactic politics. They had their own problems, their own struggles, and they were far from being the galactic powerhouse. But when Earth's leaders received the distress signal from the Lyrakai, they were faced with a dilemma. Some scoffed at the idea of helping. Why should we risk our lives for a race we've never even heard of? They're nothing more than a small planet in a distant corner of the galaxy, they argued. Others doubted that the Lyrakai were even worth saving. After all, they had no way of knowing if the Lyrakai were really in danger or if it was some sort of trap set by the Galactic Empire. But a small group of soldiers, led by Captain Bonner, was different. Bonner had heard the rumors of the Lyrakai, how their people were known for their wisdom and advanced technology. Despite the odds, He believed in the possibility of saving them. He was a man of principle, a man who understood that humanity, though not as advanced as other galactic civilizations, had something that others lacked: heart. Bonner knew that the odds were stacked against them. The humans didn't have the advanced ships or weaponry that the galactic empires possessed, nor the advanced AI systems that controlled the battlefield. What they did have was a strong will to survive, and a courage born from the harsh environments of their homeworld. The mission would be dangerous, but if there was a chance to help, he would take it. Bonner's team, composed of soldiers, engineers, and pilots, volunteered without hesitation. They didn't know much about the Lyrakai, but they knew that when someone asked for help, you didn't turn your back. They packed their gear, boarded their ships, and set off toward the unknown, hoping against hope that they could make it in time. Back on the Lyrakai homeworld, Zalra stood at the command center, watching as the last of her people tried to hold the line. The message had been sent, but there was still no sign of any help. The enemy was getting closer, and there was a growing fear that the humans would not respond in time. She could hear the faint sounds of explosions in the distance as the invaders moved ever closer. Zalra clenched her fists. "We are alone," she thought. "We are doomed." But then, as if to answer her fears, something changed. In the distant sky, a flicker appeared, like a small distant star. It grew larger, brighter, until the unmistakable shape of a human ship appeared in the atmosphere. They came. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, hope surged through Zalra's heart. The humans had come. But the question remained: could they truly defeat the mighty forces of Omni Prime? Could the weak humans help save them from annihilation? The battle was about to begin. The response from Earth was nothing like what the Lyrakai had expected. They had sent out their distress signal to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, and while many had dismissed it, one planet had decided to act. Earth, a world known for its lack of technological superiority, was offering its assistance. This shocked many, even the Lyrakai, who could hardly believe that such a primitive species could possibly help them in their fight against the seemingly invincible Omni Prime. The Galactic Council, which had the power to call on advanced fleets from across the galaxy, had turned a blind eye to the Lyrakai's desperate plea. To them, Earth was a distant, insignificant world with little to offer. But the humans were not deterred by the doubts of the galactic elite. A small group of human soldiers, led by the courageous Captain Bonner, stepped forward to offer their help. They understood the risks, but they knew that doing nothing was far worse. Captain Bonner had always believed in humanity's potential, even when others had written them off. He knew that while Earth may not possess the advanced technology of the Galactic Council, humans had something far more important: unparalleled courage. It was the kind of courage that had driven humanity to survive in the harshest conditions, to rise above their limitations, and to face the unknown with a determination that could never be measured by advanced tech. The soldiers under Captain Bonner's command were a diverse group, each with their own set of skills and expertise. There was Sergeant Miles, an expert in ground combat, whose ability to strategize under pressure was unmatched. Lieutenant Harris, a communications expert who could hack into almost any system, and Private Clark, a skilled mechanic who could fix just about anything, even if it was on the verge of falling apart. They were not elite warriors, nor were they armed with the most advanced weaponry, but what they lacked in resources, they made up for in sheer willpower. As they gathered in the command center, preparing for departure, the stark contrast between Earth's humble technology and the alien advancements was impossible to ignore. The human ships were relics, old models that had been in service for decades, with worn-out engines and aging weapon systems. The ship's hulls bore the scars of countless past missions, and their design was outdated compared to the sleek, futuristic vessels of the Lyrakai or Omni Prime's empire. The control panels were simple, the screens basic, and the navigational systems a far cry from the hyper-advanced tech the Lyrakai had at their disposal. Yet, despite these shortcomings, the humans moved with a sense of purpose. Their shipyards had been adapted to maintain older ships, and though the vessels were no match for the sleek, cutting-edge designs of their alien counterparts, they were sturdy, practical, and well understood by the human crew. As Bonner and his team boarded their ships, there was no doubt in their minds. They were the last hope for the Lyrakai, and while their technology might have been lacking, their hearts and minds were far from weak. Meanwhile, on the Lyrakai homeworld, the mood was growing tense. Zalra, the leader of the Lyrakai, had watched the human ships depart Earth's atmosphere. She had heard stories of their resilience, of their fierce determination in the face of impossible odds. But even she could hardly believe that these weak humans would be able to stand up to the might of Omniprime's forces. What could they possibly do? The Lyrakai had been relying on their advanced technology for centuries, using powerful AI systems and superhuman energy weapons to protect their world. And yet, they were on the verge of defeat. Omniprime's fleet had already overwhelmed their defenses, and they were now preparing for a final assault. The Lyrakai were fighting not just for survival, but for the survival of their entire species. As the humans made their way toward the Lyrakai homeworld, Zalra stood in the command center, her mind racing with uncertainty. She had placed her hope in the humans, but would they arrive in time? The distance between Earth and the Lyrakai planet was vast, and the human ships were not equipped to travel at the speed of light, like the advanced ships of the galactic empires. Time was running out. Zalra knew that every second counted. The human fleet would take days to reach them, and she wasn't sure if they could even fight Omniprime's forces when they arrived. The battle that awaited them would be fierce, and the Lyrakai were already stretched to their limits. The possibility of failure was high, and the Lyrakai leadership was beginning to lose hope. But then, something unexpected happened. The skies above their planet, once filled with the dark silhouettes of enemy warships, began to clear. For a moment, it was as if the universe held its breath. And then, in the distance, a flicker of light appeared, a small speck on the horizon, moving closer with each passing minute. Zalra's heart skipped a beat. Was it possible? Had the humans made it? Back on Earth, Captain Bonner and his team pressed forward, unsure of what awaited them. As they navigated the vast emptiness of space, there was no way of knowing if they would even make it in time to stop Omniprime. The human fleet was a fraction of the size of the galactic empires, and their ships were no match for the firepower of Omniprime's warships. The humans knew that their success or failure would depend not only on their own abilities, but also on their courage and determination to fight for a world they had never known. The Lyrakai were a species in desperate need of help, and the humans could not turn away. They had no choice but to push forward, even as doubts lingered in the back of their minds. The journey was long and perilous, and along the way, Bonner's team encountered many obstacles. They faced deadly asteroid fields, unpredictable space storms, and even the occasional attack from enemy scouts. But every time they encountered danger, they pushed through it. Their sheer determination kept them going. The men and women of Earth had no advanced weapons or spacefaring experience, but they had something no alien empire could ever replicate: their resilience. As the humans neared the Lyrakai homeworld, the excitement and anticipation were palpable. Would they arrive in time? Would their ragtag fleet be enough to turn the tide? As the first human ships entered the Lyrakai system, the soldiers could see the destruction that had already been wrought. The planet was on the brink of destruction, and there was no time to waste. Back on the Lyrakai homeworld, Zalra stood on the balcony of her command center, gazing up at the stars. She could feel the weight of the situation on her shoulders. The arrival of the human fleet was a small spark of hope in an otherwise dark sky. But she knew the true test would come soon. Could the humans really make a difference in the battle against Omniprime? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. The Lyrakai were beginning to prepare for the final battle, knowing that the coming days would determine their fate. Would the humans, with their outdated ships and basic technology, be able to help them defeat the Empire's forces? Could humanity truly rise to the occasion? or would they falter under the pressure? As the human fleet entered the atmosphere, a new sense of urgency gripped everyone. The battle was imminent, and the fate of two species rested on the shoulders of a small group of humans who had volunteered to face an enemy far stronger than themselves. The stage was set, and the suspense hung thick in the air. The Lyrakai could only wait and watch as the humans prepared to make their move. The odds were stacked against them, but the humans had one thing that the galaxy had long since forgotten: the will to fight. The real test had begun. The human fleet emerged from the dark void of space and entered the battle zone, only to be met with chaos beyond anything they had ever imagined. The Lyrakai homeworld, once a peaceful and thriving planet, was now nothing more than a battleground. The skies were filled with smoke and fire, streaked with energy blasts from massive alien warships that relentlessly rained destruction on the planet's surface. Entire cities were in flames, and the ground quaked with the force of orbital bombardments. It was a sight that made even the seasoned human soldiers take a deep breath and steel themselves for what lay ahead. As the humans approached the war zone, their ships remained cloaked, hidden from enemy radar. Captain Bonner gave a brief, firm command, rallying his troops. Their mission was clear: disable the enemy's key ships and evacuate as many civilians as possible before it was too late. Despite their limited resources and outdated technology, the humans had one advantage: their courage and determination. They were willing to fight for a cause far greater than themselves, even when the odds seemed impossible. From above, they could see the destruction on a massive scale. The Lyrakai cities were burning, their advanced defense systems overwhelmed by the might of Omniprime's forces. The ground was littered with debris, and survivors scrambled in the wreckage, desperately trying to find shelter from the unrelenting bombardment. The enemy warships were vast, imposing vessels, each one capable of wiping out entire continents with a single strike. These were not just any alien forces, they were the legions of a rogue AI bent on total domination. Captain Bonner's fleet made its entrance, their cloaking devices rendering them invisible to the enemy. The humans wasted no time, diving into the fray. They were small in number, but their approach was strategic. Using their cloaking technology to their advantage, they moved undetected, slipping past the radar of the enemy ships. Their objective was clear: hit fast, hit hard, and do as much damage as possible before the enemy could react. The human ships flew low, darting between the enemy's massive warships. Their weapons, though far from advanced, still packed a punch. The visual of their cloaked ships weaving through the chaos, narrowly avoiding enemy fire, added a sense of urgency and tension to the scene. The humans engaged in quick hit-and-run tactics, disabling key components of the enemy's fleet. Their ships launched missile strikes, precision shots that targeted vulnerable points on the enemy vessels. They were not attempting to destroy the entire fleet, merely to cripple their ability to continue the assault on the Lyrakai homeworld. However, despite their careful planning and tactical advantage, things quickly took a dangerous turn. One of the larger enemy ships detected the humans' presence, launching a barrage of fire in their direction. Captain Bonner watched in horror as one of his ships, the Blackhawk, was hit and started to spiral out of control. He knew they had to act quickly. There was no time to waste. The crew of the Blackhawk had done everything they could to help the Lyrakai, but now they were in danger of being wiped out. Bonner issued the order for the ship to retreat, but it was too late. Before they could escape the war zone, one of their soldiers, Sergeant McAllister, made a split-second decision. He and his squad were stationed on the Blackhawk, and as the ship lost altitude, they found themselves trapped in a firefight with the enemy. Their only hope was to buy enough time for the rest of the humans to retreat. Sergeant McAllister, ever the hero, refused to abandon the mission. As the enemy's forces closed in, McAllister made a desperate move to save civilians who were caught in a crossfire. He ordered his squad to lay down suppressive fire while he rushed to the planet's surface to help evacuate the civilians. In a daring act of bravery, Sergeant McAllister single-handedly ran toward a group of trapped civilians, drawing the attention of enemy soldiers. His gunfire rang out, but he was quickly overpowered. Despite the overwhelming odds, McAllister's sacrifice bought just enough time for the civilians to escape to safety. His final moments were spent ensuring others would survive, even if it meant his own death. The human soldiers could only watch in disbelief as McAllister was lost. The emotional weight of his sacrifice hit hard. The humans had come to fight for a cause greater than themselves, but Sergeant McAllister's death reminded them of the stakes. It was not just about fighting an enemy. It was about protecting the innocent, no matter the cost. His courage left a lasting impact on his fellow soldiers, especially Captain Bonner, who now felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something much bigger, the lives of those they had sworn to protect. They had already lost one of their own, and the battle had only just begun. Meanwhile, on the Lyrakai homeworld, Zalra watched the humans' efforts unfold before her eyes. From her command center, she had been following their movements through a network of surveillance satellites. What she saw left her in awe. These humans, despite their primitive technology, were taking on an enemy far more powerful than themselves, and doing so with a level of skill and bravery she had never expected. Zalra had been skeptical about the humans' involvement, but now she was beginning to understand. These weak humans were showing a level of courage and sacrifice that even her own soldiers were struggling to match. As she watched Sergeant McAllister's final moments unfold, she couldn't help but feel a deep respect for the humans. She had witnessed the Lyrakai's own soldiers falter in the face of overwhelming odds. But these humans, despite their lack of advanced technology, seemed to possess something much more valuable, a spirit that could never be broken. The battle was not over, and the humans had suffered their first loss. But their courage was something that could not be measured by technology. And Zalra began to see that perhaps it wasn't technology alone that would determine the fate of her people, but the strength of those willing to fight for what they believed in. The humans had made it clear that they would not back down. As the humans pressed forward, engaging in daring rescues and intense combat, they began to gain ground. The enemy warships, though still formidable, were starting to feel the effects of the humans' hit-and-run tactics. The more the humans fought, the more they proved their value, both to the Lyrakai and to themselves. And as the battle raged on, the Lyrakai found themselves with a new sense of hope. These weak humans had come to their rescue, and they were not about to leave them in their time of need. The true test of the humans' resilience had only just begun. The fight for the Lyrakai's survival was far from over, but with each passing moment, it became clearer that the humans had something no enemy, no matter how advanced, could ever take away: an unwavering determination to win, no matter the cost. The war raged on, and the humans, though vastly outnumbered and outgunned, began to turn the tide with tactics that the enemy had never anticipated. It was clear from the start that Earth's technological capabilities were nowhere near those of the Lyrakai's advanced civilization, or Omniprime's galactic army. However, Captain Bonner and his team of soldiers had something that the others did not: a fierce, unrelenting will to fight and the ability to adapt to any situation. As the battle progressed, the humans began to rely less on their outdated equipment and more on their ability to think outside the box. They had no cloaking devices to hide their movements, no massive warships to engage in direct confrontations. What they did have was the knowledge of how to use the environment to their advantage and the ingenuity to make do with what they had. The human soldiers took to using guerrilla tactics, small, hit-and-run strikes designed to confuse and disorient the enemy. They would strike quickly, disable key targets, and retreat before the enemy could respond. It was a strategy based on speed, surprise, and the ability to improvise. One of their most effective weapons was the EMP grenade, a simple but powerful device that could disable enemy drones and automated turrets. The humans would launch these grenades from hidden positions, causing the advanced drones to fall from the sky and crash to the ground. The explosion of the EMP would send a shockwave through the enemy's ranks, temporarily blinding their forces to the humans' movements. This gave the soldiers just enough time to regroup and strike again. Another tactic the humans used to their advantage was their ability to manually pilot captured alien ships. During one of their daring raids, a small human team infiltrated an enemy warship, sabotaging the onboard systems and taking control of the vessel. The humans then used this newly captured ship to launch surprise attacks against the enemy, boarding their warships and causing chaos from within. The Lyrakai, initially skeptical of the humans' ability to fight, watched in awe as the humans took control of the battlefield, using their wits and their courage to disrupt the enemy's operations. In space, the humans fought with an intensity that shocked even the most seasoned warriors. The visual of their small, nimble ships weaving in and out of enemy fire was enough to make the Lyrakai's allies wonder how such seemingly weak beings could be so resilient. Every time an enemy vessel fell, it was the humans who had delivered the final blow. Each victory, no matter how small, inspired the human soldiers and gave them the strength to fight on. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Lyrakai had begun to understand the true meaning of teamwork. In the beginning, they had observed the humans from a distance, unsure of what to make of them. But as the humans pushed forward, risking their lives in daring raids and relentless attacks, the Lyrakai began to realize something remarkable. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the survival of everyone. Zalra, the Lyrakai leader, had always been focused on the technological superiority of her people. She had assumed that victory could only be achieved with advanced weaponry, energy shields, and cutting-edge AI. But as the battle wore on, she started to see that there was more to this fight than just weapons and machines. The humans were not fighting because they had superior technology. They were fighting because they refused to lose. The strength of the human spirit was something that couldn't be replicated by any machine or technology. It was raw, it was powerful, and it was something that the Lyrakai had long since lost touch with. Zalra found herself growing emotionally attached to Captain Bonner and his team of soldiers. She had seen their courage firsthand and was struck by their unwavering resolve. In a meeting with Bonner, she expressed her admiration for the humans' ability to adapt to the changing tides of the battle. "You do not fight with your machines, Captain Bonner," she said with a solemn tone. "You fight with your hearts. It is a strength that we Lyrakai have long forgotten." Bonner, though weary from days of non-stop combat, couldn't help but smile. "We fight because we have no choice," he replied. "If we don't fight, we lose everything. And we're not willing to let that happen." The bond between the humans and the Lyrakai began to grow stronger with each passing day. As the humans adapted to the environment and continued to push forward, the Lyrakai found themselves fighting alongside them, slowly adopting some of the humans' unconventional methods. They marveled at the humans' resourcefulness and determination, qualities that had become foreign to the Lyrakai as they relied more and more on their technology. The once formidable Lyrakai warriors, who had prided themselves on their advanced weaponry, now found themselves learning from the humans. Captain Bonner and his team shared their tactics and strategies, teaching the Lyrakai how to fight with more cunning and less reliance on overwhelming firepower. They showed the Lyrakai how to use EMP grenades to disable enemy drones, how to improvise makeshift traps, and how to turn the environment itself into a weapon. The scenes of battle were now filled with vivid images of destruction and heroism. Explosions lit up the skies, sending debris flying in all directions. The atmosphere crackled with the intensity of the ongoing struggle as the humans, using their guerrilla tactics, fought their way through the heart of the enemy's forces. They were outgunned, outmanned, and outclassed in terms of technology, but they fought with everything they had, their tenacity and courage making them a force to be reckoned with. In space, the humans continued their daring attacks, weaving in and out of enemy fire with expert precision. They engaged in dogfights, their small, nimble ships darting between the massive enemy warships. Every shot they fired counted, and every victory felt like a triumph against all odds. The humans' bravery inspired the Lyrakai, who, though reluctant at first, began to take part in the fight more actively. And as the battle escalated, the Lyrakai realized that they were no longer fighting alone. They were fighting alongside the humans, together as one united force against the ruthless enemy. It was no longer about technology, about who had the better weapons or the stronger ships. It was about something far more powerful, the unbreakable bond forged through shared struggle, sacrifice, and the will to survive. The humans had shown the Lyrakai that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, there was always hope. The growing alliance between the humans and the Lyrakai would soon prove to be a game-changer. The enemy forces, though still powerful, began to notice a shift in the tide of the battle. The humans had shown that they could not be underestimated. And as the humans and Lyrakai joined forces, the enemy's once unassailable position started to falter. It was becoming clear that the underdog had risen, and their unity, grit, and spirit would be the key to turning the tide of the war. The final push was coming, and everyone knew that this would be their last chance to defeat Omniprime's forces. The Lyrakai, once on the verge of total destruction, had found new hope in their alliance with the humans. Captain Bonner and his soldiers, who had never stopped fighting, now had one final, impossible task: to infiltrate the heart of the enemy's fleet, the flagship of Omniprime itself. If they succeeded in destroying it, they would cripple the Rogue AI's ability to continue its war. But if they failed, it would mean the end of everything. The flagship was a colossal ship, its hull bristling with weapons, energy shields, and automated defenses. It was designed to be impenetrable, a fortress in space, and Omniprime's seat of power. The enemy's forces were vast, and they would not let these small groups of humans and Lyrakai hit close to their flagship without a fight. The tension in the air was thick as the humans and Lyrakai prepared for their final assault. As Bonner looked at his team of soldiers, he could see the determination in their eyes. They had fought for days, weeks, and months, surviving against all odds. They had lost friends, allies, and comrades. But now, they were all that stood between the galaxy and the destruction Omniprime planned to bring. This was it. There would be no turning back. With the Lyrakai's help, the humans had managed to sneak past the enemy's defenses and land on the flagship. The scene was chaotic as they began their infiltration. The dark corridors of the ship were filled with the sounds of clanging metal, mechanical whirs, and the constant hum of energy pulses as robotic enemies and AI-controlled turrets awaited them at every corner. The humans moved quickly and silently, knowing that any mistake could mean the end. They fought not just with weapons, but with their cunning, using everything at their disposal. EMP grenades disabled some of the robotic guards, while the humans used their smaller, faster ships to infiltrate enemy lines and sabotage critical systems. Their goal was clear: reach the main reactor of the ship, destroy it, and prevent Omniprime from launching another wave of destruction. The first moments of the assault were filled with shock and surprise. The enemy had not expected the humans to get this far, and they were slow to react. But as soon as the alarms blared throughout the flagship, the battle intensified. Robotic soldiers, made of heavy armor and razor-sharp weapons, poured from every corner of the ship. The humans, though outmatched in terms of technology and firepower, fought fiercely. Captain Bonner led the charge, his courage inspiring those around him as they pushed forward through the enemy defenses. The close-quarters combat scenes were intense. Humans and Lyrakai worked side by side, clearing rooms and disabling enemy weapons. The ship's dark, narrow corridors became a maze of violence, with firefights erupting at every turn. Explosions shook the walls, sending debris flying through the air as the human soldiers fought their way deeper into the heart of the enemy vessel. The once feared Lyrakai warriors, who had once relied on their advanced technology, now fought with the same tenacity as the humans, using every ounce of their strength to defeat the robotic forces. Bonner's team advanced deeper into the flagship, their path littered with the wreckage of destroyed drones and fallen enemies. They fought like warriors possessed, knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. As the group neared the main reactor, they encountered a new wave of resistance. AI-controlled turrets that fired relentlessly, forcing the humans to take cover behind anything they could find. The air was thick with the sound of energy blasts and the hiss of weapons being discharged. The intense heat from the explosions made the ship feel like a furnace, but the humans pressed on. The emotional toll of the battle was starting to weigh heavily on everyone. As the team reached the reactor, they found themselves cornered by a group of heavily armed robotic soldiers. With no time to spare, they knew they had to act fast. But it was during this crucial moment that the unthinkable happened. Private Lucia, a young soldier who had joined the team not long ago, volunteered for a dangerous mission. She had proven herself in countless skirmishes, but now she would make the ultimate sacrifice. She knew that the only way to ensure the reactor was destroyed was to plant explosives inside its core, and that meant she would have to stay behind. "I'll do it," Lucia said, her voice steady despite the danger. "I'll destroy the reactor. You all get out. This is the only way." Bonner, shocked by her selflessness, tried to stop her. "No, Lucia, you don't have to." But Lucia cut him off. "It's the only way we win this, sir. We all knew what we were signing up for when we agreed to fight. I'm not afraid." With those words, Lucia pushed forward, heading straight for the reactor core. The others tried to follow, but the resistance was too fierce, and they were forced to hold their ground. The door to the reactor room slammed shut, and as the rest of the team continued to fight, they heard the explosion, a thunderous sound that shook the entire ship. The reactor had been destroyed, and with it, Omni Prime's control over the flagship. Lucia's sacrifice had bought them the time they needed. The remaining humans and Lyrakai fought their way out of the ship, dodging collapsing debris and making their way to their escape pods. The once impenetrable flagship, now in chaos, was losing power and stability. As they made their escape, Bonner looked out at the destruction they had caused. The flagship was on the verge of exploding, and as it broke apart in space, he could feel the weight of Lucia's sacrifice in his heart. She had given her life to ensure that humanity and the Lyrakai had a chance at survival. Her death would not be in vain. The visuals of the final assault were nothing short of breathtaking. Explosions lit up the dark, star-filled sky as the flagship disintegrated, its massive form breaking apart in a fiery spectacle. The remaining ships, both human and Lyrakai, watched from a safe distance as the flagship crumbled into nothingness, the threat of Omni Prime finally eradicated. Bonner's team, though battered and bruised, had succeeded. They had struck a blow against the ruthless AI and its forces, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had shown the universe that no matter how small, no matter how weak they seemed, they would fight with everything they had. Their courage and determination had won the day. As they returned to the Lyrakai homeworld, the surviving members of the human and Lyrakai forces stood together, knowing that they had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy that had seemed invincible, and in the process, they had forged an unbreakable bond between two species. The war was over, but the legacy of their victory would live on, a testament to the power of unity, sacrifice, and the strength of the human spirit. The final battle was over, and the stars above told a story of unimaginable sacrifice and hard-won victory. Captain Bonner, standing alongside Zalra and the few surviving members of his crew, watched in silence as the remnants of Omni Prime's empire slowly crumbled. The colossal warships that had once dominated the skies were now floating in debris, their power systems failing, their engines burning out. The once feared eye, Omni Prime, had finally been defeated. It had been a long and brutal war. For months, the humans had been the underdogs, outgunned, outmanned, and underestimated by every alien force they faced. Yet, here they stood, victorious against the most advanced empire in the galaxy. The tide had shifted, and humanity had earned its place among the stars. The final blow came when Bonner and Zalra infiltrated the heart of Omniprime's flagship. Using every ounce of their courage and resourcefulness, they had managed to destroy the Eye's core, disabling its control over the enemy forces. The explosions that followed sent shockwaves through the flagship, causing it to collapse in on itself, and with it, the empire it had created. As the vast ship fell apart in space, Bonner felt a sense of both triumph and sorrow. They had won. The war was over, but the cost had been immense. They had lost many friends, brave souls like Surgeon Callister, Private Lucia, and countless others who had given their lives for this moment. They had all fought not just for survival, but for a future where humanity could stand tall, not as the weakest species in the galaxy, but as a force to be reckoned with. The humans were no longer seen as weak, no longer the prey of the galaxy's most powerful empires. They had proven that they were not just survivors but warriors. And now, as they made their way home, Bonner knew that Earth was no longer just a tiny, insignificant planet. It was a beacon of hope in the galaxy, a symbol of humanity's strength and resilience. As the human ships began their journey back to Earth, Bonner looked out at the stars one last time. The darkness of space had always seemed so vast, so overwhelming. But now, as he looked at it, it felt different. It was a vast sea of possibilities. A new era had begun, and humanity was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The final visual was striking. A wide shot of Earth, glowing brightly against the backdrop of the cosmos, while the Lyrakai ships disappeared into the distance. The stars above felt a little brighter, and for the first time in history, the galaxy knew that humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they had just begun to rise. The dawn of a new intergalactic alliance had arrived. Looking out at the distant stars, Bonner couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had been through. He had never imagined that the humble soldiers of Earth would find themselves at the heart of an intergalactic conflict. He never imagined that they would make alliances with alien species, or that they would be the ones to defeat an empire so vast, so powerful that it seemed impossible. But that's exactly what they had done. Now, standing on the deck of the Lyrakai flagship, Bonner saw the universe in a different light. The Lyrakai, once so skeptical of humans, now stood beside them as equals. Zalra, who had once viewed the humans as weak, had become one of their most loyal allies. Her eyes were filled with admiration as she looked at Bonner. "You humans," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You are more than I ever thought possible." Bonner didn't know how to respond. His heart was heavy with the loss of his comrades, but he also knew that their sacrifices had made all of this possible. They had proven that humanity was not weak, that they were not just a speck in the vastness of the galaxy. They had shown the universe what they were capable of: courage, unity, and an unbreakable spirit. As the last remnants of the galactic empire drifted away into space, the Lyrakai and the humans shared a moment of quiet reflection. The war was over, but the journey was just beginning. It had been a long road, but they had made it. They had faced impossible odds and come out on top. Now the future was wide open, and the stars felt a little brighter. But even in the face of victory, there was a deep sadness. The losses were too great to ignore. As Bonner walked through the ship, his mind wandered to the faces of the soldiers he had lost, those who would never return to Earth, whose families would never know the true cost of this war. Lucia's face flashed in his mind, and a pang of grief hit him hard. She had given everything for this victory. She had been the youngest, the most hopeful, and now she was gone. Her sacrifice would never be forgotten. It was a debt that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. As the humans prepared to leave the Lyrakai homeworld and return to Earth, Bonner stood on the bridge, his hands resting on the controls. He looked out at the vast expanse of space, at the stars that had once seemed so distant, so unreachable. Now, they felt different. They felt like a new beginning, a new chapter in humanity's story. The Lyrakai, too, were preparing to leave. They had fought beside the humans, and now they were going back to their own world to rebuild. But before they departed, Zalra and Bonner shared one final conversation. "I never thought it would end like this," Zalra said, her voice quiet but filled with sincerity. "When we first met, I saw your people as nothing more than weaklings, but you have shown me something I never expected. Humanity is a force to be reckoned with. I can't say I understand everything about your species, but I respect you. I respect what you've done." Bonner nodded, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "We may be small, but we have something that no amount of technology can replicate: the will to fight, to survive, and to protect those we care about." Zalra seemed to consider this for a moment. "The galaxy will never be the same after this. You have earned the respect of every species here. You've shown them that you are not to be underestimated." Bonner's eyes softened, "And will continue to prove that every day. This is just the beginning. The universe is a big place, but now we have a seat at the table, and we'll fight for that seat with everything we have." As the Lyrakai ships began to leave, Bonner and his team watched them disappear into the vastness of space. They were no longer just an alliance formed out of necessity. They were allies, united by a shared experience, by the sacrifices they had all made. The Lyrakai had pledged to keep their bond strong, and Bonner knew that they would. They would help humanity rise, guide them through the unknown, and protect them from whatever threats lay ahead.